everybody from Worldwide Headquarters in beautiful Daytona Beach, Florida. And we are resuming the Dean's Speaker Series, Resilience Reimagined. We went on a well-deserved summer break, as I hope you did, and now we are back. Happy August, this is great. Great to see you, as you already figured out probably. I hope I'm your favorite Dean, but at least I'm Alexander Siedschlag. I'm the Dean of the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences, and we have a very distinct and distinctive guest today, Charles Williams. So hi, Charles, and great to have you. Resilience Reimagined is the Dean's Virtual Speaker Series, hosting esteemed guests once a month to discuss fresh perspectives on a broad range of resilience topics. The series supports our college's strategic vision to be a true destination college for multidisciplinary studies and impactful collaborative research as we strive to transform our students and the broader community into responsible global citizens. Charles is going to talk to us today about from airlines to TSA, so transportation safety administration, a career in aviation security. He is the Facility Security Manager for TSA Headquarters in Springfield, Virginia, a 625,000 square foot campus housing more than 3,000 federal employees. In this role, he serves as TSA's lead point of contact for all facility level security matters, coordinating law enforcement, emergency services, federal partners, and building management to maintain secure and resilient operations at one of the most critical locations in the Department of Homeland Security. Charles is a seasoned national security professional with over 20 years of experience in federal service, specializing in aviation security, emergency preparedness, and facility protection. Before stepping into national level leadership, Charles spent over 15 years in direct airport operations. So came to the right place, and actually you came back to the right place because Charles is an alumnus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and also an adjunct assistant professor at our university. So thank you for your service, Charles, and thank you for being here. And thanks everybody for joining. As a courtesy to Charles, if you wanted to leave one sentence of self-introduction in the chat and also point out, if you can, where you are joining us from, that would be appreciated. We'll do the same procedure as always. So Charles will take it away. Any questions for Charles as he is presenting, please leave in the chat. And then at the end, we'll also set aside a few minutes where you can use your mic to ask your questions or make your comments live. And otherwise, we'll pick up what we have in the chat. So without further ado, Charles, thank you so much. Please take it away.
Thank you, Dean. So the Dean did a great introduction to me. We know who I am. I'm Charles Williams. And as he said, I've had over 25 years in aviation. We're going on 30 years when you count me being an undergraduate student here in Daytona. So it's great to be back in Daytona. So the early roots of my education, we'll talk about that, my time at DCA. I was one of the first 2,000 TSA employees hired worldwide. We'll talk about that and what happened with how we rolled out these airports. And then I went into TSA Headquarters. We'll talk a little bit about human trafficking. I know that's an important thing for the Dean, so I'll talk about that and TSA's role in that. And then a little bit about my teaching and how I've been able to take this into my teaching and philanthropy, which is important to me. And we'll wrap up with some questions. So I grew up around airports. I always loved aviation. I thought I was crazy to have such an obsession with aviation. And then I got a card in the mail from Embry-Riddle, and I found out that there were thousands of other people that were just as obsessed or more obsessed than me about aviation. I came down here in 1996, so that was really 30 years ago. Scary, next year, 30 years ago next year. And I toured the campus. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with aviation and having a school that was built around aviation. And I got my undergraduate degree in 2002 from Daytona Beach, Embry-Riddle. Took me a little longer than anticipated. It wasn't a 4-year degree, but I made it. I made it across this finish line. And a lot of people along the way got me there. Professor Bill Martin, I had a less than stellar freshman year because I was in aerospace engineering, and I did not know that aerospace engineering was a math degree. I don't know why I didn't realize that. And math was never my forte. So I switched majors to aerospace studies, which is now an aeronautics degree. I think it's called undergraduate in aeronautics. But Bill Martin was one of my first professors that I really remember, who kind of took me under his wing and put up with me and got me beefed up. Dr. Augusta Simon, she was my speech professor, and freshman students had to take a speech course, and it was one of the best courses I took. And hopefully Dr. Simon would be proud of me today speaking to you all. And then Dr. Reinhold Schliepler, he was a philosophy professor, and he got me into my love of the arts and humanities because I came in very focused on math and sciences, and Dr. Schliepler got me into the humanities. So definitely him. And then Darby LaJoy was briefly the administrator of TSA. Darby started with TSA with me as a supervisor. So Darby was in a uniform, one of the first 2,000 hired like me, worked his way all the way up to being the administrator of the agency, and also is now with Leidos. So he was someone that totally went from the bottom up to the top and just led from the ground up. So as I said, I got an undergraduate degree from Embry-Riddle, and what Edmund calls me a double eagle, because I have a master's in aeronautical science also from Embry-Riddle from Worldwide that I got in 2010. And I did both of these while I was working, which was great. And that's where I could connect with my students, because many of my Worldwide students are also working at the same time. I was hired in 1999 as a ramp agent with AirTran Airways. I was a sophomore, junior here at Embry-Riddle. I worked out on the ramp in Atlanta all summer long, and then would work occasionally in Orlando. Went to Dallas and Boston. And then every weekend, I had only one class Friday morning, and I would get in my car and I would drive from here to Orlando Airport. I would fly up to Atlanta, I would work the ramp, and I would fly back Sunday night and be back to class on Monday. So those are pictures of a much younger me loading bags onto aircraft. That really showed me a lot about how to work in an airport environment. You're working under stress. The airlines tell you every minute counts, every second counts, every second of a delay of a flight compounds. And by the end of the day, we've got multiple delays on top of multiple delays. And it's just, you just can't have delays. So we had to turn an aircraft at the time in 25 minutes. So that meant from the time the aircraft pulled into the gate, the wheels were chocked. We had to have that aircraft unloaded, passengers back on it. We had to clean it between turns, get the passengers off, passengers back on, bags back on, fueled, and out of the gate in 25 minutes. While I was there, I was just a ramp agent, but we were the launch customer for the Boeing 717-200, which was the McDonnell Douglas MD-95. It was a $20 million airframe. So here I was, this 20-year-old kid with these brand new $20 million airplanes that we were the launch customer for. And they were a super advanced DC-9 with a glass cockpit, BMW Rolls-Royce 715 engines. They were so quiet. And to be there when the Boeing reps and the Rolls-Royce reps were there and be able to talk to them as a student and as a ramp agent, and was just a phenomenal thing for me. So all the stuff I learned out on the ramp, I still use it today. I was able to take that right into my TSA career. I can remember during the rollout, we had an issue with a passenger, and there was a retired Army veteran, Vietnam era guy that wasn't very customer focus centric, and he was more of a drill sergeant. And I walked up to him and I said, I don't even know what I said to him, but I diffused him and I got him down. And this guy looked at me and he was like, wow, you just handled that thing perfectly. And I said, this is what we do every day in the airlines. I said, we deal with people like this all day long. Because during the startup of TSA, a lot of these people never had customer service backgrounds before, never dealt with stressed out passengers and the dynamic of passengers. So, coming in there, it was just like, boom, no problem. Sir, have a seat. We'll get you taken care of. You're going to be on your flight. 2001, to 2002. That was the federal rollout. So they set the deadline after 9/11 of 19 November 2002 to have all the airports worldwide, because we've got Guam, we've got Saipan, Pago Pago, Alaska, Hawaii, worldwide, federalized. So 44,000 officers had to be trained and hired within a 12-month period, and 1,100 explosive detection units had to be deployed nationwide. So when I was in my super senior year at Riddle, as I call it, my last year, I was living in Chanute, right down the road here on Bevel Road here. I got a phone call from TSA, from a recruiter from TSA, and she said she wanted to have me go to an assessment center. And I said, sorry, I can't do that, because I thought I was going to go work for the State Department. I had these big ambitions of working for the State Department. And I said, I'm going to take the Foreign Service exam, so I won't be able to make your assessment. But someone told me to call her back, and I called her back, and she said, the assessment's in Memphis. We're going to fly you up there first class, because it's the only flight seats we have left, and you're going to spend a weekend in Memphis. I said, well, this sounds like it's something real, and you all are serious. So I flew up to Memphis. I went through a 3-day assessment process, and I was hired on the spot, and given a full job offer of $40,000 a year, which was the highest starting salary that year in my degree program. So I was very proud to have my name when Embry-Riddle had all the graduation people and people starting out with their salaries. There mine was at a whopping $40,000 a year as the highest starting salary. So that made me feel really good. We were originally called SWAT, and that did not last very long because it was very confusing and it really wasn't the name we wanted to have. But we were either screener workforce action teams or security workforce action teams, depending on who you ask. And they changed that over to the mobile screening force. So once they hired me, they told me I would have a start date, and I did not know when it would be, but I would be starting. And they flew me out. They gave me 24 hours notice. They flew me out to the FAA Academy in Oklahoma City. So a lot of my professors had talked about the FAA Academy. They talked about how it was a premier school for learning about aviation specific stuff. And here I was, 22 years old, flying out to Oklahoma City to the FAA Academy. That's me out in Oklahoma City with my FAA badge on and my FAA lanyard in the hotel out there. So they flew us all out to Oklahoma City. They taught us how to screen passengers, how to run checkpoints, how to run x-ray machines, how to do x-ray identification. And they really basically told us that we would be on our own once we left there. So 2 weeks later, I was on an airplane to Louisville, Kentucky, which was the second round of airports to be rolled out. The first round was BWI. That was the BWI pilot airport. So the second round was Louisville, Kentucky. And there I was, feet on the ground, running an x-ray machine, running a metal detector, screening passengers. And the day before we had taken over, the airlines were running screening. So everyone that was an airline employee was terminated. They were offered jobs with the TSA as long as they met their employment requirements, but they had to be trained. So we had to run the checkpoints while they were in the classroom. And then once they left the classroom, we had to do the on-the-job training for them. So my 4 weeks in Louisville turned into 7 weeks in Louisville. And from there, I went to Cleveland. And Cleveland was my first time on my own because I was now fully certified, fully trained. I trained my own airport. I had done my OJT. So I opened up Cleveland Airport. And I had somebody meet me the night before with CBP that handed me a key. And he said, here's the keys to the airport. Here's the keys to the checkpoint. You might want to post a guard just in case somebody tries to sabotage something, because there were people that did not meet the requirements and they were going to lose their job. So they were afraid that they might go in there. And he was right. Somebody had unplugged an x-ray machine and stuff. So good thing we got there early. But 4 o'clock the next morning, I had the, fresh graduate from Embry-Riddle, I had the keys to Cleveland Airport. And I was opening up the airport. And then from there, I went and I had a great time. I went up to Syracuse, New York in the fall, and just phenomenal airport, phenomenal work ethic up there. And we still didn't have any days off. We were working 7 days a week. And I got a call saying that my mobile screening force time was over because I had picked DCA. The deal was you could pick any airport in the world to go to, and TSA would offer you a full-time job once that airport federalized. So I picked DCA. I'd always wanted to work for the FAA, and I thought that would be a great way to get into the FAA, to get into DCA. So DCA opened up, and I had to get an apartment the next day and had to move down to DC and work 7 days a week for about 3 months there, opening up and federalizing DCA. They sent me out to Dulles for a month and put me in a bag room. But by the end of summer of 2003, everything was normal, and I was a supervisor at DCA. So the mobile screening force that I talked about earlier, they were formed in November 2002, again, to do the initial screening, and then they make up what's today's National Screening Force. So the National Screening Force will do or National Deployment Force will do things like special events like the inauguration, the Army's birthday parade. They'll staff airports like Alaska and stuff that are very seasonal airports that are very hard to staff. Hawaii, some of the Hawaiian islands are very hard to staff because they don't have enough people locally to do it, and people locally are working at resorts and stuff. So they'll fly them in their emergencies. They'll fly people in. So our group that deployed to roll out airports in 2002 really still exists today as a national force that goes out and travels and will staff special events and surges. So in a few weeks, I'll be back down here again to talk to the students, and worldwide students too can do study abroad. And the biggest thing for me was study abroad. That was the biggest thing as a student. I did study abroad in France, and I tell everybody we spent 3 months in France because we were there June, July, August. Reality was we were there 2 weeks in June and all of July and 2 weeks of August, but it sounds better to say 3 months in Europe. And I was just, here I was in a country, I didn't speak the language, and I had to figure out how to do everything from laundry to buy groceries to everything overnight in a country where I didn't speak the language. I got to travel every weekend. I went to Germany one weekend. I went to Scotland one weekend. I went to Italy another weekend. So just this travel-like mindset when we're rolling out airports and we're getting an apartment lease within 8 hours, that was nothing to me. That made it so easy to me. This building of local trust and basically being able to do stuff on the fly. I learned that from study abroad. So I encourage everybody, if they have an opportunity, to do study abroad, because I think you learn by a fire hose when you're in a country and you don't speak the language, how to figure stuff out. So like I said, it's now the National Deployment Force. They have 374 officers and do the surge assistance, disaster special events. Like I said, they did the Army birthday and the inauguration. I threw this in here to talk a little bit about human traffic. I know that's something very important to the dean. And in the lower right corner, there's a picture I took in Orlando Airport yesterday. So back in 2013, they had the Blue Lightning Initiative, DOT and DHS. They trained 400,000 aviation workers. From TSA, it's the TSOs, the inspectors, the federal air marshals, basically everybody that's customer facing did online training on recognizing this stuff. It was done through Homeland Security investigations. They give you common indicators. So you have your travelers, no control of ID, money, phone, these one-way tickets, minimal luggage, just something doesn't make sense. And you recognize the indications of it. And you have like the posters and stuff that they put up. So if you know what's going on, you know what's going out there, then you're able to see it and you're able to recognize it. Anything in aviation, whether you're an inspector inspecting an aircraft, you're a pilot doing a walk around before you take the aircraft up in the air, you're a TSA person running an X-ray machine, you know what looks right. You know what every day looks like. You know what an aircraft looks like. So you're going to know if you've got, a hydraulic leak coming off the aircraft. If you're an X-ray operator, you know what a clean bag looks like. You may not know there's a firearm in the bag, but you know that there's something that's not right in that bag because you know what a right bag looks like. Same thing with human trafficking. You know what a passenger looks like. You know what somebody that is flying is like. You know their behaviors. So when there is a behavior that isn't right and it jumps out at you, you see it. So I'm going to talk about a hypothetical scenario here. We'll say that, and this is me speaking as Charles Williams, not as a TSA employee. So everything, my opinions are my own, and everything I'm doing here is on my own accord. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and I'm going to speak in generalizations, but it is based upon an actual scenario that I was firsthand involved with. So a young adult with an infant, minimal belongings, no clear travel plans. So they're sitting here at the airport. Somebody bought them a ticket. They're not even sure of their destination. They're flying to New York. She doesn't know what really is going on. The best I could describe is she looks shell-shocked. She claims she was there to meet somebody online who promised to provide her with care when she got there on her arrival. No luggage, not even enough baby formula for her baby. She was traveling with her baby. She just had this fearful, scared demeanor about her. So knew something was, like I said, we know what passengers look like when they're flying. This young lady did not look like a typical a new mother flying with a baby. We worked with the airlines, got her a cup of coffee. She didn't get on her flight because she was getting a cup of coffee because we said she needed a cup of coffee. Missed her flight. We're able to engage our network. You've got at airports, you've got like Orlando, you've got the police department there. You've got federal law enforcement there. You've got airline employees there. You engage your network. Anytime, this is a good example of it. We talk about the airport is a multi-legged stool and it can't stand up without us. Airport operations is one big leg of the stool. The airport police department's another leg of the stool. The federal government's another leg of the stool. And all the legs of the stool held this up. And by doing that, trusting your instincts, seeing that something isn't right, we had a vulnerable passenger who we were able to identify. She did not get on her flight. I don't know what happened to her, but this is an example where everything can work well together. And just from knowing what looks right, what somebody that's a typical traveler looks right. When you see somebody that's wrong, you know that they're wrong. And we were able to engage there. So left the airport 10 years ago, and I took on a job as the facility security manager at the TSA Freedom Center. So the Freedom Center is a facility in Northern Virginia that acts as basically like a fusion center across all aviation components and transportation components for all modes of transportation. It's got some cool 9/11 artifacts on display. Rather than me talk about it, I have a YouTube video that I'm going to share with everybody here.
Busy airport checkpoints are probably the first thing that comes to mind for most Americans when thinking of the TSA. But away from public view, inside this government facility outside of Washington, D.C., a different kind of action takes place. It's home to TSA's Transportation Security Operations Center, often referred to as the TSOC.
Okay, Steve, so now we're going out on the watch floor.
One step onto the watch floor, and you can quickly see how massive an operation it really is.
Yeah, so on a typical day, we receive an average of about 70 significant events that get reported to the TSOC.
TSOC was created in the wake of 9/11 to prevent another similar tragedy. It combines real-time intelligence and operational information across every transportation mode. TSOC's mantra is simple: communicate, collaborate, and coordinate.
We now know that this man's name was on a so-called federal terror watch list or a no-fly list.
Back on Christmas Day 2009, Nigerian Omar Farouk Abdulmutalab attempted to detonate explosives sewn into his underwear on board Northwest Flight 253 as it approached Detroit. TSOC's mantra pushed employees into high gear. In this room, a critical incident management group was set up. Detroit Airport's federal security director, along with law enforcement, kept the incident manager at TSOC in the loop. Worldwide changes were implemented on the spot in case a similar terror attempt was in the works. Federal air marshals changed their standard operating procedures, and the White House was updated. But it's the reminder of 9/11 and the continuous threat to aviation that remains the major focus.
So we have a number of different screens up. Primarily right now, you're looking at air pictures.
Those screens you see are actually radar feeds. They give staff the ability to track any aircraft of interest. And those significant events of interest run the gamut.
It ranges from a guy forgetting he had a firearm in his bag and going through a checkpoint to someone exceeding the amount of liquids they can have going through the checkpoint. Everything that happens that could be security related is reported to the TSOC.
The latest now on the LAX shooting that left one TSA agent dead.
Back on November 1st of 2013, a 23-year-old man entered Terminal 3 of Los Angeles International Airport and fired a semi-automatic rifle, killing TSA officer Gerardo Hernandez and wounding several others. Hernandez became the first TSA officer killed in the line of duty.
So we've had a number of incidents of national significance in which we managed out of the TSOC. But what was unique about that one was there was the emotional toll of our own had been affected.
The tragedy at LAX illustrated how TSOC personnel have been trained to focus on their mission to maintain that situational awareness.
There is a lot of adrenaline and there's a lot of emotion, particularly in something like that where we know our own could be affected. But we really pride ourselves in controlling that emotion and still continuing that professionalism.
Every day, TSOC employees pass by this memorial to 9/11. It's made from a structural beam of the World Trade Center's North Tower. At the very base, limestone remnants from the Pentagon. And the V-shaped piece is from the aircraft fuselage of United Flight 93. All a daily reminder of why the TSOC exists.
So again, they did a much better job than I would ever do about talking about that. But that's where I ended up as the head of basically building security. So I was the point person for facility security for that site. And I worked there for 5 years through 2020. And then I went as the workplace violence program manager. So TSA has a robust workplace violence prevention program, pretty typical of any agency or any organization where we have zero tolerance for violence. And I was able to take on that role. It was given to me by an Embry-Riddle Worldwide alum. My coworker, my boss at the time, was like, "You can take over this program now." So he handed it off to me. He knew I knew what my stuff and I could take it over. And then most recently, I became the facility security manager, same role I had at the Herndon Operations Center as at our big TSA Springfield campus that really opened up 100% January of this year with the return to the workplace with everybody coming back in the office, but had been open a couple years prior. In a limited capacity with everybody working remote. So, I'm an instructor here at Embry-Riddle. I teach Security 400 Aviation Security, and I try to use what I've learned in 20 years, 25 years really, in my class. I try to give them real world scenarios. I try to have them all do a tabletop exercise where I give them realistic scenarios. The last 2 terms I've had them do a tabletop exercise as an optional exercise where we look at a sovereign citizen. So we have someone that self-identifies as a sovereign citizen. They refuse to present their ID. They say that they're above the law. Something very realistic you see where somebody believes that the laws don't apply to them. And I have my students work through it. And one of the things I really like to do when I'm doing it is I use ChatGPT to run the scenario. So I've built into ChatGPT a very realistic airport environment. So when the student says that they start talking to the perpetrator, the person coming into this, that says that they don't have an ID, it will answer back with responses that somebody typically in that sovereign citizen role would do, and it kind of runs the scenario for me. I've also been able to use some of the students over at Daytona Beach are eager to volunteer to be role players for me. So even though the class is online, I can have him on a Teams call or a Zoom call and acting as a role player. And he plays a really good drunk sovereign citizen because he gets intoxicated too while he's there. And it's based upon a real scenario. I love to teach. I love to share. That's why I'm here today. I like to tell stories. So I like to make the theory and the textbook stuff work through my stories. I love telling stories about stuff. I shared some stories beforehand with you about some of the crazy stuff I had dealt with. And I really like embracing AI technology as a tool. At the very least, it's a fancy spell checker and grammar checker to help you write and develop your writing. I tell my students I spend more time writing and doing stuff with AI than I did before, but my product is better, I think, afterwards. And I also tell them, you got to think, you can't think like you're working in a laboratory. You've got to think like you're at night shift. It's 2:00 in the morning in the rain. What can go wrong? What can go wrong in the dark in the rain at 2:00 in the morning? Because your security breach isn't going to be 11 a.m. on a Thursday afternoon when everybody is there. Your security breach is going to be in the middle of the night. I share a story. I had a lot of other duties as assigned when I worked at the airport, and we had a fiber cable that ran for Verizon that ran the entire airport. And I wanted to do the fiber cut at 2:00 in the morning because I said, we're not going to impact anybody. I learned very quickly, if you do it at 2:00 in the morning and something breaks, you don't have your support network out there. You don't have your ability to go get parts. You don't have your warehouses that are open to get parts. So I learned that you're better off doing it in the middle of the day. So you learn stuff like that operationally. Like, the textbook answer would be you would do your fiber cut in the middle of the night where you don't impact anybody when nobody's in the building. The reality is you want to do it when you have your support there. So you got to think like that with your decisions, because the book will tell you do it in the middle of the night. Realistically, it's a 30-second cut that you want to do in the middle of the day. So another thing that's really important to me, and this is just personal, and this is just me, not the university, not my employer, this is just me, Charles Williams here, is giving back. I started giving back when my parents passed away because they were able to get me to Embry-Riddle, make me who I was. I've established a life insurance gift back to the university. We have a 5-year-old who has developmental delays and special needs. So upon my passing, there will be a gift to the university in honor of my son that will establish a special needs scholarship for students. Another crazy thing I did is I like working on Jeeps. So I bought a Jeep from a coworker, restored it basically, sold it, and then I was able to donate the profits to the engineering physics lab for COAS at the Daytona campus. So I made several $1,000s off of it. I had a lot of fun restoring this Jeep, and they were able to get a nice donation. We surprised the students over at the engineering physics lab with a big giant check. And it's investing in the future. I've got an endowed scholarship that I established for study abroad students. Worldwide students can do study abroad. Sue wants me to bring that up, as Worldwide is welcome to do study abroad. And Dean, I'd like to do a $250 gift, again, me personally, to you, to the Dean's Fund for whatever you see fit today. So
Thank you so much. It's much needed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chad.
Absolutely. So, they teach this safety first. Nobody gets hurt, nobody gets killed. Use your data. You have your data to do stuff off. Don't do stuff off of a whim or something is right. Back it with data. Be transparent with your communication. I had a boss tell me that bad news is not red wine. It doesn't get better with age. So if you've got bad news, if you found out something is not working the way it is, tell everybody, get it out there, because it's not going to get better with age. And be there for the next generation. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm looking at retirements. I'm looking at leaving aviation. So, look at the next generation, because they're coming up now. And I tell my students this. I started out at the bottom. I started out in Publix as a janitor cleaning toilets. And then from there, I went as a ramp agent loading airplanes. That's how I got in the safety department at AirTrain. I was a ramp agent, when I started, like I said, we were the launch customer for the 717. So, you don't always go into company through to the front door. Sometimes you got to go in through the back door. Get your networks, engage your networks, start working. When I was out at the FAA Academy, we were TSA. I wanted to engage with the FAA people because at the time I wanted to work for the FAA. Stay mission focused, but be adaptable because you never know what's going to happen next. You never know what the next threat's going to be, the next problem's going to be, and you can never stop learning. I'm always learning. I'm still learning. So I hope to continue, Dean, to teach future students here at Embry-Riddle. There's an upcoming AI summit. I hope I can be involved in that. I really want to talk about AI and my use of it in teaching and trying to stay ahead of it. And looking back and mentoring past students, I've had several students reach out to me, looking for recommendations, looking for career advice. They want to go work for the TSA, or they want to go. I had somebody that wanted to be a flight instructor that wanted a recommendation. He was a phenomenal student of mine. So helping these kids out, these students out as they move along in their TSA career, or as they're in their career. So yeah, mission over job title. You got to get it done. I know that's a buzzword kind of thing, but you got to get the mission done over whatever your title is. People are your best layer of security. Like I said, what's right. So you see something that's not right, you'll know it. That's all across anything. If you're a pilot, like I said, it on a walk around. If you know what a clean airplane looks like, and if you see a leak, you know it. And then pass it on. My grandmother told me that before she passed away. Give back what you learned. If you learn something, teach it to somebody else because you're not going to be here forever. So pass on your knowledge to other people. And that's it. I'm done talking.
I think
40 minutes. Thank you all for listening to me for 40 minutes.
Very sharp, very inspirational, so important. Thank you so much. So let's see if we have anything in the chat. So thank you for saying hello. This is great. So see people join us, as you can see, from across the country. Kat Moran is a tenured associate professor in our department of new name, Human Factors Safety and Social Sciences, and the chair of our Master of Science in Human Factors program, actually. And her question is, I see that airport security has better incorporated human factors principles to reduce error of security personnel. Can you speak to your perspectives on how effective this has been?
All right, so human factors, and again, this is Charles talking here. Human factors is such an important thing. It's human factors engineering and the psychology of the human-machine interaction is amazing. I'll talk, and I'm speaking in generalities here, but so these numbers, don't quote these numbers here, but an X-ray operator operating an X-ray machine in an airport is only going to be able to detect a certain amount of stuff because you've got so many human factors at play. You've got fatigue. You've got them looking at a monitor. You've got a machine that's designed optimally for a X-ray operator to use. But at the same time, you've got, on a typical checkpoint, you could have 30 different officers operating that machine. You've got a lot of stuff at play. Every bag is different. So to be able to take that human operator and be able to have them have technology that can assist them to see things, to see what's not right in a bag, to flag certain things. You'll really see it. And Daytona is an airport over here that has the analogic Connect CT machine. So you're taking the operator out where when I started with TSA, it was a single view X-ray machine that was black and white at a lot of these airports. One of the first things that came in was Smith's detection came in with adding color to it. So your organic matter would be one color, your inorganic matter would be another color. So by able to do that, you could see things that are metal like firearms. You could see things that could be potentially explosives, would be a different color, and doing that. So we took that standard image, we evolved to having the colors on there so that the eye can see it, and the person can now detect things like firearms and explosives and potential threats easier in a bag. Now you've got light years ahead of that. You've got technology that can incorporate much faster computing power that takes it away from them. So now you're taking that human performance and you're giving that officer every tool that they have and everything that they can use to better detect an item in a bag. And it's just so important to leverage the technology, because a person looking at x-ray machines and looking at images, I can tell you this, again, this is me personally, is probably not the best way to detect things when you're looking at 50,000 images. A lot of reasons why that's not the best way to work.
Thank you, Charles. And Melissa, I want to say thank you for sharing and echo that, Charles. Thank you for your generosity to your alma mater and even your current university, because you are an adjunct professor.
Yes.
So echo that. Thank you. Okay, NJ, what's the protocol for the TSOC once a person who is being trafficked is identified? You mentioned engaging your network. Do the people at the receiving airport look out for the person who was meant to pick up the individual? If so, what might occur at that time, both to the victim and the trafficker?
I have never worked on the watch floor, so I'm only speaking hypothetically here that generally what's going to happen is they'll do bridge calls between locations, and this is human trafficking or anything. You could have any type of a security incident where you've got something that's happening at, say, Orlando Airport, and the other end of the airport will say Hartford, Connecticut, BDL Airport. You can get both airports on the phone. Each airport has its own operations center. That operations center is going to have contact information for local law enforcement at the airport. So the TSOC is basically going to be the conduit that connects is going to connect the airport. So what I assume would happen is if it was something where you were going to get somebody at the destination, TSOC is going to be notified by the departing airport. The departing airport will give all the information and identifiers to TSOC, which will relay it to, say Bradley Airport, which will have their own command center, their own operations center, their own law enforcement contacts, and relay it to them. And they'll be able to be the ones to reach the air carriers at the destination airport.
Thanks, Charles. And another question from Melissa. What are some of the requirements needed to work for TSA?
Check our website to make sure, but U.S. citizen, 18 years old or older, this is for a TSO, you have to pass a physical, and then you have to pass I would say, difficult color vision screening. Men are inherently, we got our human factors experts on here, men are inherently more colorblind than women. So I know a lot of times men struggle with the color vision test. It's not the one where you have the numbers in the circles, but you've got to actually do a whole spectrum of stuff. So passing that color vision screening is a challenge for people because of color blindness, and then a basic physical exam, and then, of course, a background check for a national security level basic clearance.
Thank you. And NJ, you're welcome. So any other questions? And you can also claim the mic if you prefer to ask your question live online rather than typing it. Maybe in the meantime I can ask out of curiosity, because as you know, my one of the ones who hired me at my previous institution, who was on the advisory board as the search committee, was Admiral Loy, the former Coast Guard commandant, but then also the first boss, or the creator, if you will, of TSA. So, and I met another colleague back then who was among the first 2000s. So what was that like to be after 9/11, we are still digesting the horror of it and trying to figure out what does it mean, also to us, as travelers, but what does it mean to the world in the first place also. So how did it feel? Where do you think that would be stabilized? Do you think TSA was going to be there to stay? Would you personally have thought it was something like for the next 5 years, and then we can, now after 20 years, we are talking about more than 20 years about re-privatizing, and some airports do that already. For example, LAX even does it. And also here next door, but in Danport, right? So your thoughts?
And again, this is me personally. So right after 9/11, it was just surreal. Everyone came through, was so worried about taking a prohibited item on an airplane. I had a woman crying to me because she had a small pair of scissors and she thought she was going to go to jail and it was the end of the world because everybody was so tense flying after 9/11. That mentality is no longer there. You can go on. I encourage everybody to go on TSA's Instagram. We are very big on posting stuff. We're getting kudos and accolades for Instagram, and we show this stuff. We had a RPG last week, I think, in Spokane, Washington. We took away from a passenger. It was inert, but we grenades, explosives, anything that you can imagine, firearms, narcotics. So that mentality has left almost 25 years, 25 years later, because people are bringing these things in there. That wasn't the way it was after 9/11. I don't know that I thought TSA would be the agency that it is when I started. We were building the airplane while it was going down the runway. We were trying to stand this agency up. But we've matured into an agency where I feel like we are a grown-up government agency. We are a grown-up and advanced agency. Like the dean said, TSA is having discussions about privatizing stuff. It works in certain environments, and again, this is me personally speaking. It works in airports like Sanford, where you've got tourist flights to the UK and flights to Europe, and smaller airlines that are flying in and out of there, where it doesn't make sense to have a giant federal presence because of all the infrastructure that comes with it. It also, I think there's places where federal security is much better. I think Orlando MCO, I would personally want to have a federal presence there. I never had a bad experience as a passenger, and I fly a lot. I think I'm a critic of the TSA as somebody that works there. But honestly, in 25 years of flying, I've never had a bad experience where anybody deviated from procedures or did anything nefarious to me. So I think we have a phenomenal workforce that is there. But in the 25 years, we have really gone from, trying to figure out how to do basic screening to being a first-rate agency with all these interagency partnerships and all this networking with other agencies where we've got people in airports that are, federal employees that are doing their job every day, getting people through and relatively quickly. I mean, I've never stood in 2-hour-long lines. I haven't been to Orlando in the summertime, but with all the people leaving Disney World, so maybe I need to experience that.
At least there is clear reserve and things. So yeah, but TSA is doing a great job at Orlando, and they're even so fast at TSA pre that they outpace clear on a regular basis based on my observation. Absolutely. Pretty smart, pretty fast, and they even have even because you mentioned Orlando, they have pre-X-ray private personnel that help people get everything on the belt the right way and expeditedly. That was a smart move.
That goes a long way. When we stood up the new AT X-ray machines in 2008, the biggest problem was these machines were built in Germany, and Germans are very methodical and very organized in putting stuff on the X-ray belt. And I would be on these calls with them, and they would say, "You Americans just slammed these giant bags onto the belts, and it's we're not set up for this, and you just slam your stroller screw sideways and jam the machines up." So yeah, having everything set up has really helped, and having those private employees out there to do that. I see there's a question from Fabio Roberto, I apologize. And thank you for being our student. And I can read it out. So Roberto says, Fabio, I apologize. Fabio says, "Thank you, Charles, for sharing a bit of your journey. Certainly inspiring. I am an ATP from and ERA Worldwide student. Thank you for being our student, Fabio, studying aviation management. And I'd like to know if there are any courses or training you could suggest to improve technical and non-technical skills, for example, from the perspective of a pilot flying to an airport not controlled by the TSA." So non-technical courses to take, I tell everybody, take your arts and your humanities courses, take your writing courses. Take those courses because you'll learn the technical stuff of flying the aircraft. If you're an ATP, you're already at the top of the totem pole in terms of flying and your skills as a pilot. So I would encourage you to do your writing, your speech courses and stuff like that. So a pilot flying into a non-TSA airport. So if you're flying into any airport that has 121 air carrier service, you're going to have TSA screening, whether it's from the TSA or from a TSA contractor. And I do want to say that if it's an airport like Sanford, a lot of the people don't know that they're not TSA because they are following the exact same protocols, doing the same equipment, the same level of screening. But if you're flying into a smaller airport, let's say you're flying into Ormond Beach or New Smyrna Beach, where you're flying into a smaller airport like that, if you see something, say something. The AOPA's General Aviation GA Secure program is still alive and well. And again, as a pilot, you're an ATP, you know what security looks like and what's safe and what a safe aircraft is. So you'll know and you'll be suspicious of something. And that level of security really works at smaller airports where there's no TSA presence. If you see something, say something. You've got a lot of pilots that fly in and out of that airport regularly. They know that airport. So if they see somebody that's doing something that's off, that's walking across the flight line that looks a little bit dazed and confused, you stand out like a sore thumb.
Thank you. And a lot of attendees say thank you to you, Charles. So thank you. Great. Anything else? Anybody else? Nancy, I see you're connecting to audio. If you have a question, Nancy, please feel free to go on. Or if audio doesn't work, you can also put it in the chat. As we're approaching the hour, any final remarks, recommendations, suggestions?
No, thank you, Dean. Like I said, for anybody, writing matters. Writing is important, and the ability to do the humanities side of it is very important.
We just spoke about the role of rhetoric and composition in emergency management and overall in support of the national preparedness goals. So very important, thank you. And for our college, that among other things, obviously wants to be a destination college in its pillars of excellence, like safety and security, but we also deliver the general education program. So from a practitioner, also teachers for us, so important to hear that. So thank you for underscoring the relevance of general education for very practical purposes as well, among all the other citizenship building and general education. General education is important purposes. So this is great. Can we just see if among the 3 new messages downstairs there's something? Oh, thank you. So thank you for attending. This is great. We were well above 50. I think this is good. So thank you for joining us. I hope you're also going to join us next month for the next occurrence of Resilience Reimagined that will be advertised through the usual channels. The safest way to catch up with us and not miss anything is to follow us on social media, in particular LinkedIn. Great to see you. Have a great rest of your August. And thank you, NJ, once again. Nice. Forensic psychology, very important, and great connections to make to national security issues out of there. Wonderful. So with that, thanks for attending. Thank you for giving us your time, talent, and treasure. Thank you for being such a friend and supporter and faculty member. So thank you so much, Charles.
Absolutely.
Be safe, be good. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.